All right, this is my my YouTuber apology video. No, yeah. So it was brought to my attention that the last video had no fucking audio. So hour 40, hour 50 down the fucking drain. But fuck it, let's just redo it. I didn't like what I said anyways. So nah, I actually kind of did, but mixed. There's more stuff I could have gone into detail with, but anyways, we're just gonna start fresh. Again, June. Backrooms. Adored it, honestly. I mean, it's weird because I was actually rewatching Project Hail Mary the other day, and man, there's something about watching stuff in theaters that like elevates things. Because Backrooms, I really enjoyed it, but now I'm a bit skeptical. On a rewatch, that is, I'm a bit skeptical on a rewatch, just because if I do rewatch it, it's gonna have to be at home. Um, and I mean, like we have a decent kind of like surround system, but there's something about the atmospherics, sound, and just like your surroundings in a theater, like it being so dark, that really elevates the way a movie should feel, and it especially works for a movie like this, in which it is especially quiet, but there's so much going on like a visual level, that I think some of it's going to be taken away if I were to watch it at home. So I'm a bit scared now to rewatch it, but I did like it a lot whenever I watched it in theaters. Um, that being said, let's get into it. So another preface: I don't really know anything about the Backrooms and the lore. I just vaguely know of like a lot of the imagery surrounding it. So whenever they showed certain things in the movie, I'm like, oh yeah, that's sort of like the back rooms, as it were. But it sort of goes into like a lot of depth in regards to it. I mean, like one of the main metaphors, I guess, in regards to its actual like setting and like the way the back room sort of works, is with this company. And I mean, it's briefly stated that they make like MRI machines, right? So I mean, the only connection I could make is like the back rooms is basically like scanning the real world and like putting real world elements into its like abstractness, right? Sort of like scanning the world and sort of bringing it in, which is why also like the secondary metaphor about places within the back rooms being sort of remembered, right? Copies, but not exact copies. I mean, the thing that Clark says is, if you ask somebody to describe a dog, like they'd get some of the things right, but not the whole. Or describe a dog and like draw it. They'd get some of the things right, not the whole. Which I mean is very true, and I guess that's like kind of a commentary on like imagery or the way we process images. Um, they say people have like different like kind of like mental maps and whatnot. But I thought that was like an interesting way to tie everything together. I mean, again, it might have been explained in like the YouTube stuff, but I really don't know. But as far as them explaining stuff in regards to just this movie and explaining it to someone like me who doesn't know anything, I thought they did a really good job. Um, I don't want to get too into sort of like online commentary regarding this movie yet. And again, like I've said before, that I don't really look at this stuff online. But this was kind of hard not to, just because this was such a big movie, alongside another movie that I'll talk about here later. But both of them were so big, it was like kind of hard not to see commentary regarding them. Um, so I guess spoilers for the other movie, because it's pretty obvious, right? But anyways, uh, one of the things people were saying is that like, oh, it's like too vague and like nothing happens, blah blah blah. But they kind of spoon feed you like a lot of this information. I mean, information regarding the backrooms, yeah, like I was talking about. And again, I think it's interesting, this whole like MRI thing, that I was picking up. And I mean, again, I might be like kind of like wrong on some stuff, but that's kind of what I got. Uh, but then people were saying like vague, like on a character level, and I thought the characters were very deep. Well, obviously there are two main ones, Clark and Mary, right? So like Clark, obviously our main guy, and then Mary, the therapist. I think both of them are incredibly deep, and if you're sitting there and you're engaged, you're gonna get a lot from them as characters, or as far as characters go. But let's start with Clark, because both of them are tied in a sense that they have a sort of trauma, and then obviously like the I guess like kind of professional tie, right? Since Mary's his therapist and he's the patient. Uh, but there's a lot going on with Clark. This sort of idea that maybe he could have done something more with his life, but he's sort of caught in these like self-destructive cycles almost. And he kind of just goes around blaming everybody else for his problems, right? Um, and that's why, to some extent, I feel like he was incredibly like relatable to a lot of people. Just this idea of somebody who, again, like felt like they probably could have done a lot but didn't end up doing much, and sort of like has to fall back on something they never really believed in, right? It's I guess like minor tragedy, but I mean, again, you have control over your life, and that's sort of what Mary is like trying to push across to him throughout it. But I mean, even then, with like Mary and the way her therapy is, it's pretty one note, and the fact that, hey, just like persevere and you can do it, sort of thing. uh, but I mean, kind of true to an extent. um, but I mean, again, Clark is just caught in this like cycle of a self-fulfilling cycle of pessimism, as it were, right? Shout out to Markiplier. No, but I mean, truly, he's caught up in this cycle of thinking where every single time he comes back to it and he's thinking about his life and how it isn't where he wants to be at all, he's finding someone to blame for it. I mean, specifically in this scenario, it's his wife. He's or his ex-wife rather. Um, he's always trying to find a way to just blame somebody else for the fact that he's not who he wanted to be, which, I mean, again, relatable to some people. I mean, to some extent, I guess, relatable to me. Not that I'm looking for people to blame, but I mean, realistically, his issue is that he can't take accountability for his actions, right? That's his fatal flaw to an extent. And I mean, even to the very end, he's sort of redeemable in the fact that he finally sees that he's the problem, and maybe he's just better off alone, which is one way of dealing with the problem. But again, it's not necessarily like a proper solution, or not a very productive solution, I'd say. And the fact that it's just not very healthy. It's not a very healthy way to think. You know what I mean? There's like these minor conversations they have in between. Mary asks him, well, like, do you think people like some people are meant to be alone? And I mean, that's what Clark believes. He's just like caught in this like weird cycle where he just feels like he needs to isolate him. And then, I mean, with him also being an architect, it makes sense why he was so attracted to the back rooms to begin with, right? This idea that he can be there and be alone, and he's so like enraptured by, I mean, again, like the architectural aspects of the place, the fact that it is so bizarre and weird, but also incredibly structured. It makes him feel safe. But in speaking of mental health, you have to kind of question why someone this sort of disturbed would want to be in a place that's so disturbing, right? Why is this sort of like abstract realm more comforting and engaging than reality to someone like Clark, right? It's very interesting with his character, or at least that's sort of what I was thinking throughout it. Like, just the fact that he feels so kind of alone in the real world, and he doesn't really like kind of know his place, and he's very upset about his current position within the real world. So whenever he's finally able to go somewhere else, he just enjoys it for what it is, right? The fact that it is different, and the fact that it makes him feel a bit more realized in some ways. Despite him having like a sort of like initial fear or anything like that. But I mean, like, one of my favorite parts of the movie is when he first like crosses over into the back rooms, and it's just like kind of quiet for the like 5 or so minutes that he's just walking through, and he just has this look of like pure like curiosity about him, and he's just looking at the world, right? Here, I'm actually gonna pause just to make sure the audio is coming clear. All right, yeah, so the audio is fine. Just had to check. But again, like, Clark is just so like enraptured by this whole thing, and I thought that part of the movie was really interesting. Again, like a very subtle and quiet moment within the film, and done so incredibly well. Because I mean, again, like, I can see why people would complain that the movie is slow or boring or this, that, and the other, but it's just, I mean, this is gonna be me talking about like theater audiences and then also like younger audiences and stuff like that, but it's just like an attention span thing, I think. But that's kind of what I like about movies. You're sort of forced to be there to some extent. I don't know how else to say it, but you're forced to be there, and you should be engaged. And I mean, if you're not engaged, leave. It's as simple as that. And I mean, like that's a fair sort of critique, I guess, is to say, hey, like, I went there, I was watching it, and I just wasn't engaged, so I left. That's more fair than you like sitting there throughout the whole movie and saying I didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like if I truly didn't get something that I was watching, I think I'd probably just stop watching it, if I'm being completely honest. But then you sort of downplay the effects of the movie, and these ideas of like trauma, and the sort of ideas regarding memory, I think, which is also pretty interesting. And I mean, with the memory thing, I kind of tied that to like the way they're doing this like role play therapy thing. You know what I mean? Clark is only relaying what he thought was happening in the situation with the wife, and Mary was always trying to kind of clue him in on what the wife potentially could have been thinking, or maybe like in ways Clark might have been like contradicting himself with his story, right? Again, like I feel like Clark that entire time, like not wanting to take accountability, would sort of shift the narrative in small places or misremember things as a way to make himself look a little bit better. Because I feel, again, like deep down by the very end of it, he understood that he was wrong to some extent. And which is why I say that he's like a bit redeemable in some ways, because at the very least he ends up letting Mary go, right? He's like, you know what, like, yeah, this is my fault, this is unfortunately like the way I'm wired, so I'm just gonna like stay here as like, I don't know, punishment for himself, I guess. But even then, just to separate himself, like I think by the end of it he just wanted to be completely isolated, maybe feeling that was better for everybody else, everybody that he hurt. But I guess more importantly, just better for himself, right? Like that was the only way he could kind of cope with everything. So again, interesting character. And then Mary, I guess as well, having her own personal trauma. Like her mom was a bit of a shut-in sort of character, and the sort of effects that has on her, which is why I think she was so willing to try and escape the back rooms, because again, she feels encapsulated and she feels trapped and she wants to break free, which plays into her therapy thing, this idea of windows and sort of like breaking through the window and escaping, right? Whether that be like escaping your like situation in a more like physical sense, or your surroundings, or like breaking free from your own mind and escaping these like dark recesses that can exist there. And again, my kind of thing with her is like she's a bit interesting as well, because like Clark, she's also very isolated in some ways. There's some shots pretty early on where you kind of cut to her and her life, and it mirrors Clark's pretty similarly. Both of them are alone. Both of them are just looking at a TV and drinking. I guess in some ways wishing for a kind of escape, which television can provide. But again, just feeling totally lonely. And then also carrying this kind of trauma with them the whole way through. Obviously, Clark and his like situation leading up to then, including the divorce, but then with Mary, her mother, and I mean, she literally carries a piece of her trauma with her. At the very beginning, they're sort of like breaking down the home she used to live in, and she takes this like little piece of concrete from the driveway that has like her handprint and her mother's handprint on it. But she carries that with her throughout the whole movie, and then finally at the end, whenever she's escaping the back rooms, she breaks it while using it as a weapon. Again, kind of completing the cycle that she's finally able to let go of the past and sort of move forward. So like in a sense, they both have very complete arcs, but they go in entirely different directions. They finally sort of let go in the past, but one of them just decides to stay trapped for reasons. So again, both like very deep, very involved characters. And I mean, like if you want to complain that you didn't understand it, then you just like weren't watching the movie, I guess. I don't know. And sorry, huge spoilers for like the whole movie, by the way. But I mean, again, I'm probably like off track here and there, but that's just sort of what I got. And then again, like I'm also cluing in very minor things that I saw online, but some people had like really interesting theories. Some of them I don't necessarily agree with, and then some of them trying to like tie in lore from the YouTube stuff, so I didn't really know what they were talking about. But there is one super interesting thing that they were talking about actually, and in this regards to racism. And I mean, I was talking about the sort of isolation, but Clark is the only black character in the movie, And I was thinking about this too, oddly enough, while I was watching it, because the white dude, the boyfriend character, he's wearing a shirt that says "End Apartheid." You know what I mean? You have all these sort of like white characters or white passing characters, and then you have one black character, and then one of the white characters is wearing a shirt that says "End Apartheid." You know, there's a connection there somewhere, unintentional or not. I don't know. Maybe it's worth watching some interviews of the director and seeing if he has anything to say about that. But I did think it was interesting. But this whole theory that this person was bringing up, or not even a theory, you know, they were just kind of talking about things. But they were essentially talking about, you know, reasons why Clark would have felt inherently sort of villainized and isolated within that time is one, because of the time period, and then two, him being a black man, right? Him being a black man in that time period, because I think it takes place in like the 90s or something like that. But black man already sort of, you know, stigmatized against, and he's trying to go into higher education and be an architect, right? Black people traditionally were sort of, you know, like kept away from higher education, or you know, it was like a lot harder for them to get into you know, levels of higher education, right? And I mean, especially for an architect, it's a lot of schooling. So I mean, again, to be like completely isolated from the thing he wants to do would sort of make him angry to some extent, because that's another big thing about him as well. He's a very angry sort of person, angry, you know, towards himself, you know, towards the people around him, but also just at the world as a whole, right? But like at the same time, kind of valid, right? Like you're trying to pursue something and make something of your life, and everybody just tells you no. You know what I mean? It has to make you feel a bit lonely in some ways. So I thought that was an interesting idea, and I mean, like that, like, you know, video that I watched really sort of went into more depths about it. I'm not too educated to really speak on it much more than that, but I just wanted to sort of share it because it was in the back of my mind, and I'm kind of happy that somebody brought it up too, because I mean, like that's a weird, like, oh, like, you know, like too woke sort of thing, but I mean, like, shit does be kind of that deep, right? But anyways, yeah, so that was a major thing. And then I guess the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the back room is a lot of the imagery. I absolutely love the look of the movie, that very subtle music at times, but the actual look in regards to everything, again, just intensely surreal, right? And really captivating in ways that sort of play on your nostalgia, I guess. Because I mean, again, in regards to it being sort of about memory, these places are familiar, even to somebody like me, and I think, you know, to most people. I feel like that's kind of the appeals of the backrooms to begin with, right? Or like liminal spaces as a whole, is that they feel familiar. Not that they are familiar necessarily, but they feel it. Like something deep inside you says, I can imagine a place just like this, or, you know, I can imagine when I was younger and maybe like I wasn't fully developed like on a mental level, but I can sort of remember these things and remember the emotions tied to these places. Intensely interesting, I think. But then again, just like the way they play on certain things on a visual level. Obviously that shot, you know, just like showing the room and then like panning down into the same room as it's getting sort of remembered and things are being misplaced, and, you know, like things are sort of like clipping through themselves. Super interesting, like just visually. But I remember that being like part of the trailer or like advertising. Very cool. And then they sort of do it here in the movie. But like some of my favorite shots in the movie are just when it's like establishing shots, pure silence almost, but it's just like holding on for like a few seconds of just like a random like piece of scenery. Some of the ones I remember distinctly is like it's just like a shot of like a corner of a building, so it's just literally like the corner of the building, and then just like hyper, you know, blue sky. So blue it looks fake, right? And then speaking on that, one of my favorite shots is whenever Clark goes to see his employees and, you know, ask for their help in exploring the back rooms, is that he's like walking like to their place, and their place literally looks like a set, right? It's so jarring and again, just unreal, like, but, you know, like we know it to be reality, but it's so real, it looks fake almost. It's strange. But yeah, like it's literally just like house in the background, Clark like walking down the pathway, and then just like these little houses like in between, which is also a place that gets remembered at the very end, and it is like sort of a set in the sense of the back rooms. It's like one giant room, and it just houses like all these little elements, which Clark has already seen. Um, so I mean, something to say about that maybe. Um, but yeah, and then the shot of just the, what is it? Sort of like one of those poles with like the electrical like cylinder thing wrapped around it with the wires. I mean, sort of like what's behind you, more or less, like this right here. Example. One of those things right there. Hopefully that tracks. But yeah, so one of those things, but it's literally just like a shot of that thing for a few seconds. But I mean, whenever I say it's playing on memory, it's because like we know these things, we know of these things. We can't especially describe them, but when we see them, we know them, and we know how they sort of make us feel. And I thought the movie did a really good job about capturing that sort of feeling behind it. Um, and again, even this kind of like uncanniness that exists even in the real world, it was interesting in that way. But yeah, so that's it on Backrooms. Again, enjoyed it on a visual level, enjoyed the characters. Hopefully it holds up on a rewatch. And actually, the last thing I will say about it is I was trying to explain it to my friend, but there's a moment where the scientist character is talking, or no, well, they're just kind of like showing him at home, but he's watching a movie on TV with his family, and the movie I picked up pretty quickly was a Never-Ending Story. It was like the very end of the Never-Ending Story, but whenever movies will use like other pieces of media within like their storytelling, it's always for a reason. And I was trying really hard to find the connection, and I couldn't really quite place it. I felt like I had the idea, but I couldn't quite explain it in the way I wanted to. And my friend, I don't think picked up on it, but I tried explaining it to him and asking if he thought he could probably pick up some type of relevance, but couldn't. But anyways, I was watching the Red Letter Media video about the Backrooms, and yeah, they picked up on it, which was kind of nice. And like they're smarter guys. They've been watching movies for a long time. Um, but they said that the connection is just in the Neverending Story, it's about escaping to another world. So very simple, the sort of connections. Um, which I mean, I guess yeah. Again, like Clark just wanted to escape somewhere else, somewhere where he wasn't him necessarily. But great movie. Second movie this month. This Is Not a Test. Has the girl from Kicking It in it. Not that good. It's based on a book, and I think the book might be an interesting read. But with this movie, again, I think the thing I found most interesting about it was it having a lot to do with, again, sort of with the Backrooms thing, men not wanting to take accountability for the actions. It's a very minor theme, I feel like, but it's something that I picked up on. The fact that with the Kicking It girl and her character, she's just sort of always surrounded by like abusive men to some extent. I mean, her father very clearly very abusive to her and her sister. And then the sort of alpha male type guy, him trying to like assume this leadership position and just like command everybody to do what he wants, right? Very selfish. And then even the brother character, not her brother, but like somebody else in the group is like a brother and sister duo, but that character is very cowardly and ends up being lightly abusive towards her. And then the other guy, like love interest guy, I don't care. But anyways, interesting characters there. But then also her kind of navigating being a young adult. Oh, I guess also like the teacher character being sort of like iffy. I say iffy, but no, he's a straight up pig, I guess. Yeah, but with her being this very vulnerable sort of younger woman, and like navigating like all of these different characters in her life while also going through this like zombie apocalypse thing, you know what I mean? I think it's a pretty interesting spot to explore a character. Yeah, I just don't think it's done too well in the movie, which again is why I say I think in the book, where you can kind of develop a bit more, it would maybe be interesting as like a YA teen, like sort of interesting, or just like young adult, like more mature sort of thing, right? So YA, my bad. Um, Yeah, because again, the dad's abusive. The alpha male type just trying to like to assume this leadership position over everybody else. And I mean, like, he'll go as far as to even like put people in harm's way. I mean, we see it pretty early on with the mom of the brother and sister. You know, she being the adult, she assumes this sort of leadership role, but I guess again, like this being like a younger guy, him wanting to like seem like mature or you know like strong in this whole situation, like he has it under control. Really does his best to like try to like make the calls right and like make the plays. But it's always the wrong one, and that really like starts hitting his ego whenever the mom steps in and be like, "Hey, your plan isn't working. We're gonna do what I'm doing because I mean, like one, like I'm the sort of like older one here, and you know, two, like we've also been like surviving as well. We have just as much a right to say things as you." And it's very obvious pretty early on that it's like really hitting this alpha male dude because he seems like hurt after every single conversation, and he's always sort of like eyeing her. He's like, you know, just like can't wait till something comes up, and then yeah, literally like the first chance he gets to like try and kill her off and make it look like an accident, he takes it. So fuck him. Um, and that's kind of a crux of the story in places. And then this brother character, which kind of ties into this teacher that gets into the place. The teacher is like very obviously a creep. He's sort of like slinking around, like scoping out the kids, but you know, our main character especially, and she of course starts to feel very uncomfortable about it all. And this is very nitpicky of me, but she's having a conversation with that teacher, and the teacher literally just like starts creeping on her, like you know, talking about her like physicality and whatnot. Uh, like well, one like super fucked up, but then two, I think it's sort of implied that they're kind of whisper talking to one another. In the movie, it just sort of sounds like they're regular talking, but they're kind of separated slightly from the group. Like they're all like in the gym still, but they're talking, and he says this like creepy shit, and of course she's disgusted, as of course we should all be disgusted by it. But then you know he gets called away, he leaves. A character comes in, and you know like the two of them start talking, and again like in the same exact tone, and then the other characters come in and heard exactly what they were saying. So it's like, so did y'all not hear the teacher saying like all the creepy shit? Like I don't know, like minor nitpick shit, but again I think in a book it would make a bit more sense, and so you can kind of like place the characters where you want to place them. But just like in the movie standpoint, it doesn't really work that well in my opinion. um, I don't know, some other things. Yeah, because I'm not too positive on this movie on a whole. It's one of those like takes place in one location kind of movies. Whenever there's action, it's very like shaky. The drama is like decent, but not like amazing. This is a very sort of like watch it once, be like, oh, that's all right, but it's like definitely elevated by having people around. Sort of. I don't know. Everybody was trying to be a comedian while we were watching this, so I don't know. No, but a bit more honestly, because again, in regards to men and being like fragile or like insecure in some ways, that brother character, because he fucks up in a big way whenever they're trying to fight off this teacher guy, because it turns out he's been bit and he's trying to bite the sister, and he has a chance just because he has a gun. He has a chance to shoot the guy off of her, but he misses and shoots the sister, and then he blames it on our main character, and like he literally gets like physically abusive with her. He starts like kicking her and stuff very violently, and again like fucked up, but also the thing about men not wanting to take accountability for their own actions, right? There's a consistent through line I think with some of the stuff in this month in regards to that. But yeah, so huge, you know, like yeah, just huge thing about that. But obviously the thing afterwards, and the sort of one of the reasons why I call him a coward, is because like he gets to a point where he sort of like stows himself away, and then he finally calls for the main character, and he's basically like begging for her forgiveness. And our main character, despite going through so much, is still fairly good natured, so she forgives him, and then right after he's forgiven, he kills himself. So again, like coward shit, right? The fact that you don't want to take your own life because you have some kind of regret, and you want to alleviate yourself from that, and whenever you finally do, you're finally like a man enough to kill yourself, like whatever. But this movie, again, this is not a test. The book might be pretty cool to read, but the movie in itself, as far as zombie stuff goes, like eh. but whatever. Scary movie, pretty good, honestly. I liked it, and I mean that might be surprising, but again, I kind of like Family Guy, and this has a lot of parallels. Something that I was most impressed about it is just like how many references there are in this. There are tons of references. Some of them smaller than others, because obviously with the scary movie stuff or like parody movies as a whole, there's usually one main plot that they're like sort of like parodying, and then they kind of just like add things here and there, just like a lot of stuff within pop culture, and that could be like in a movie sense or just like real world stuff. In this movie, like again, like regarding like real world stuff, like they bring up like the Kendrick and Drake beef, like very briefly. Like they bring up the Kanye shit. Again, just like small things in a real world. So if you're kind of tapped into like culture and pop culture, you'll get these sort of things. But I mean, again, like those are pretty big, so kind of hard to miss. But even then, just because like obviously like, the Wayans Bros now are like a bit older, like they'll bring up some old shit, like Ghostface Killah gets a shout out, which I mean pretty cool. But then like these smaller references here and there, like if I'm just gonna list some of the references, like the main movie that they're parodying would be the Scream reboot, the one with Jenna Ortega in it. That's the main one, right? But there's a lot of minor allusions, especially with Anna Faris's character in this, initially to Bloodlines, Final Destination. You know, she is this sort of like stowaway mom, and she's like living out like in this house, and it's like all booby trapped. But then obviously it does sort of start by connecting Scream and Final Destination with the whole like thing in the background, like the roller coaster breaking down, everybody dying, and then that one kid leaving, then getting crushed by the roller coaster, which is sort of the same thing that happens in Bloodlines, but with the tower. Although the roller coaster thing was a thing in one of the other Final Destination movies, so. But the whole like developing plot, especially with the like Jenna Ortega lookalike character in this Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday they call her instead of Wednesday. Fucking stupid. But yeah, Tuesday, like that whole setup is a reference to the original Scream movie. But you know, she's supposed to be this character from the Scream reboot movie. So you're bringing like these old characters, like, you know, I guess like legacy characters, into this group of new characters, right? Which is sort of what this movie, Scary Movie, is about. It's about having these like legacy characters from the other like scary movies, and bringing in this new group of like young actors to like be, I guess, like the new leads, or whatever. But again, so like interesting and like layered in a way. But yeah, so movies they reference Scream, some Final Destination, and then some small ones that I noticed, like Ma is referenced pretty heavily with Regina Hall's character, with her character. Like I was trying to figure out like who she was and like the way she's acting, because like she's trying to be like the cool hip mom, and she's like giving drugs to the kids and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, Ma. And I feel like the only reason why it didn't hit me, it only hit me on a rewatch, was because I had never seen Ma. But that was like one of the ones. But like Sinners gets referenced, like Get Out very clearly. It Follows even, obviously John Wick, which ends up being a pretty funny sequence. What did I say? Sinners, yeah, Scream, Bloodlines, Sinners, Ma, It Follows, Get Out. I feel like there's a couple other ones, just like here and there, that get referenced pretty heavily. But again, like even ones that are like non-horror related. Like I said, like John Wick gets like a huge shout out. Even Everything Everywhere All at Once gets kind of a huge shout, oddly enough. And I feel like there's another one, like pretty crucial, that I'm like missing out on. But I can't think of it at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, the Everything Everywhere All at Once, whenever they're having the John Wick fight sequence, you know, Anna Faris like does that pose after she's done fighting all of the ghost faces. She does that pose with the two dildos, which is what Joy does in Everything Everywhere All at Once after she's done fighting the cops in the hallway. But anyways, but that's also another thing. Something that I kind of liked about this movie is with the Wayans Bros. Like I'm pretty sure they're like really tapped into pop culture, and it's very apparent that they have sort of a love with movies because of how true they are to certain things. Again, that Everything Everywhere All at Once reference, it's like a small thing, but I think for the people who get it will really appreciate it. And then the John Wick stuff, like even down to the lighting, like just this like very like warm, like kind of orange, like yellowish lighting, and then these like really cold, like blue, like teal slash green sort of like lights and stuff, and like combining both of those, and then obviously like Anna Faris, like that whole like last act, she's just like in the black suit with like the black wig, and it's like whatever. But she's really funny in this movie. And then also shout out to the younger actress who's supposed to be her like reboot character essentially. She has like the same cadences as her. Like it's kind of uncanny at times. But other references actually, a small one as well. Longlegs, and The Substance, pretty big one. But again, like with the more like referential stuff, it's always funny, and with them like sort of being fans of like movies, or at least the way I'm seeing it, and how faithful they are, is because like even with the small stuff, they do try to replicate these certain things. Like with the Sinners stuff, like recreating those sorts of scenes. Like one of the main ones is the initial scene with the was it Damian Wayne, right? Whenever he's like rolling up to the church in his like little old school car. Like that shot is pretty much the same, like the way the car like rolls up like into frame, and you know, like the way like sits like right beside the church and stuff like that, the way he walks in, like all of that's the same as like Preacher Boy going into the church in Sinners. But then obviously this like something that I really liked about it as well is the humor, because it's very dumb a lot of the times, sometimes a bit more outrageous, but sometimes just like these more subtle kind of like surreal jokes. But also mixing in like some very clever jokes as well from time to time. And then obviously there's a lot of jokes that don't land. But one of the more like surreal jokes, and again it's like very small, not even that surreal really, but just like a very minor thing, is like whenever he rolls up in the old car and he like rolls up next to the church, he just plugs the car into like to like an electric charger. Like, so it's basically just like an electric fucking buggy. Like kind of dumb, but again, just sort of like the modern era stuff, just bringing it in for whatever reason. But that whole scene quickly becomes very like sort of outrageous comedy thing, because he's talking about how his character like isn't gay anymore, but then he starts like deep throwing the mic and shit like and shit like that, and just like shouting out how he's like not attracted to men, he's like attracted to women, just like really sort of like projecting. But very funny scene, and I mean like that's one that like does kind of go on too long, if I'm being completely honest, but it goes on too long, like in the sort of like perfect way, where it's just like one, like why the fuck is this going on so long, and like why is he just like elevating like everything he's doing, because initially like it's not even like anything like too like graphic, but you know, like, but he starts like adding these things. He's like, yeah, I'm not attracted to men anymore. I'm not attracted to looking at their butts and stuff like that. It's just like really like weird shit that he's like throwing in there. And then and then he starts like just like going on with it, and then he starts deep throwing the mic, and it's like, all right, cool. But then also on the opposite end, jokes that go on too long, that are bad because they kind of go on too long. Like the whole well, initially it starts out funny with the Get Out thing, and he's like clawing at the chair, and that's pretty funny, just because they really start exaggerating it. He's like pulling out like all of like the I don't know, like what would you call it, like fluff, like inside the couch. He's like pulling all of it out, and it just like piles up around him, like a bit more surreal and like cartoonish almost, but sort of like humorous in that way, or like, you know, a way that kind of tickles me in a humorous way. And then like him like starting to like tear up and like become emotional, and he just has like these like giant snot bubbles and shit like that, and like tears like flowing out of his eyes, like very cartoonish. But whenever he goes into the sunken place, which again, very faithful to how it was in Get Out. And then also the scene before where he's out smoking and, you know, the guy's like running at him, again, just like super faithful, right? But then like whenever he like goes into the into the sunken place, there's like a K-pop Demon Hunters reference, and it like that just feels like it goes on like way too long. It becomes just like a parody of the song, about like smoking weed and shit like that, and it's like it feels like some parody shit you would like find on YouTube from some like 20 somethings, right? Not very funny, guys. I'm gonna be honest, but that's besides the point. That's beside the point. But again, like, but that's what I mean with like the Family Guy humor thing. I feel like that they're throwing so many jokes at you, like very consistent. Like it is a very like joke a minute sort of movie. And I mean, we talked about what's it called? Lethal Weapon, Lethal Gun. Shit, the one with Liam Neeson in it. The one that Seth MacFarlane wrote. The Naked Gun. There you go, Naked Gun. Naked Gun. But with that one and the way the comedy works, like joke a minute, they're always trying to make you laugh because it is a pure comedy in that way. Uh, and again, like some of the jokes hit, some of these more like background physical jokes really hit, and then some of them just like don't really hit the mark, and then some of them also just kind of go on too long and don't become funny anymore. The K-pop Demon Hunters thing being an example of one of them. But then obviously the bits that do go on a bit longer, some of them work. But again, with them mixing in these jokes, some of them being surreal, some of them being very like kind of slapstick, some of them being very sort of like obtuse, good. But then they'll have some of these very clever jokes, like one of my favorite ones, like pretty early on, is just like a jab on like white audiences, with the Tuesday character. You know, she's being asked the Scream thing, like the what's your favorite scary movie, and she's like, oh, I'm not really into scary movies. I'm more into comedies, but more like Judd Apatow comedies. You know, like they're not really funny, but they make white people feel like they're smart. You know, very funny, very quick. Or you know, at least I found it very funny. But again, it's just like a kind of commentary on the culture, right? So there's that. And then also, again, with the way they're parodying, like, you know, the stuff that they're parodying and being as faithful as they are to it, it comes off as incredibly clever. I mean, you have characters that are like direct sort of like copies of the characters from the other movies, and then just, you know, being a bit more apparent with their motivations. Like, obviously, you have the guy who's supposed to be Jack Quaid's character, from the Scream reboot, and, you know, just saying how like, oh, like I'm the love interest, I'm not like the obvious guy. But then, you know, everybody around him being like, yeah, you got this like Jeffrey Dahmer look, you got this you know, like white serial killer type of look about you. And then, you know, the cliche from that is just being, or, you know, the cliche for horror in general, it was like the love interest is always a suspect. You know, they always have some type of motivation, which is also kind of what happens in Scream as well. But then in this movie, it's like a carryover. But then they also have the character who in Scream was the like cinephile, and she was really into horror, so she was like picking up like apart all these tropes, which makes sense in Scream because Scream is a very light parody of horror movies at the time, and it's picking at the tropes and cliches of horror. So you have that character in this, but the way to parody it is she's also still sort of like tapped into pop culture, but she's also very woke. So she's making commentary regarding horror, but then also the sort of like racial like agenda that plays into horror as well. So again, and some of the stuff she has to say is like sort of funny in places. Some of it is a bit sort of like I don't want to say boomer-ish, but sort of just like poking fun at millennial type of humor, right? Or like millennials, or, you know, like younger, like Gen Z type audiences. I found personally, but I feel like that comedy kind of works because, I mean, again, like with the generation that I'm a part of, like us being semi-self-aware, we're also self-aware enough of like some of the things that we will make commentary around, right? So that character was also sort of like necessary and funny whenever they were supposed to be. And then like in regards to things being faithful, again, like I think about that scene on the train because that's like another parallel to Scream, where like, you know, the two characters are like on the train, and the Ghostface killer is like trying to creep up on them, but like everybody's in like Halloween costumes. And then in this, I mean, it's the same thing. Even like some of the shots are like angles of like, you know, like establishing the train and like looking at certain people in their costumes. And then there's like a lot of people that get like shout outs in this. Like you have like the Babadook, you have like Hard Eyes Killer, obviously Megan, and there's like a few others just like here and there. But again, just with the Wayans Bros, like paying homage to horror and then just paying homage to like, you know, current films in general. I always found very cool. And then even like towards the very end, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of all I want to say about this. I mean, like I found it to be incredibly funny for the most part. Again, like some jokes linger on a bit too long. But some jokes in themselves are like very funny, very quick. But I actually think this one works on a rewatch. I mean, like I watched it with two different types of people. I watched it with my parents and one of my uncles, and then I watched it a second time with just my friend. And both of them had very different reactions. Obviously, me and my friend being closer in age, we sort of had a very similar reaction. It was like, yeah, it's pretty funny. But then me being a bit more tapped into like pop culture stuff than he probably is. I was picking up on like a lot of the smaller references, and also just like sort of talking to him about like pop culture stuff. But I mean, obviously him as a whole, like he just found it funny, right? Because it is a very funny movie, and I think it does play to younger audiences with like sort of like quicker attention spans, or I guess technically worse attention spans, since you know jokes are constantly flying at you. It keeps you entertained in that way. And then with older audiences, I mean, it's weird because like they would have been like around our age whenever those like initials like parody movies were coming out. I mean, because like those were a huge thing in like the 2000s and maybe like early 2010s. Not and then they just kind of died out. But I think comedy as a whole sort of died out. Or you know, more like traditional sort of like comedies, outrageous comedies and whatnot. Trying to figure out what I want to say, if there's anything else to say in regards to Scary Movie. Yeah, but again, like my parents and stuff like didn't like it at all, but me and my friend did, very much so. But then again, I think it's also a thing too where since a lot of the humor is like lightly referential, if you aren't watching movies and you don't really know much about what's kind of going on, like it probably just won't be as funny to you. But like still, like the more like outrageous, surreal bits of comedy should still be sort of funny, right? But that's the other thing too that I mentioned. Like some of them are just hit or miss, so you could probably go away just thinking the movie wasn't very funny. And again, like it being comedy being very subjective, and then obviously movies as a whole being very subjective to your enjoyment. I mean, it makes sense. So like I don't really bash anybody who didn't like it, but me personally, I liked it a lot. One of my other kind of favorite jokes as well, just one last thing about this. One of my other like favorite jokes about this was, well, two things actually. Again, like with one of them being a bit clever, and then the other one being sort of like really on the nose, but still quite funny, just like in How Long It Goes. The first one is whenever the Tuesday character is in the hospital, it's playing on that scene in Scream where Ghostface is trying to go kill her while she's in the hospital, and she's leaving and she's crawling on the floor. But in that Scream movie, Jenna Ortega's like really like acting it up. And then in this movie, like Tuesday is like doing it as well, like really acting it up, but it's very obvious she's acting it up. And then her sister comes in to like save her, and she's like you're not gonna win an Oscar for this, you know what I mean? It's like a horror movie. Just ask Demi Moore, which is of course a reference to The Substance, which also gets like its own little bit in the movie. But Demi Moore being in The Substance, and like, well, I didn't watch The Substance, but the consensus was she was very good in it. But I mean, again, you don't really get accolades for horror stuff, unfortunately, despite there being a lot of very good acting in horror typically. Yeah, so that was very funny. But again, like commentary like on the culture as a whole, in regards to like Oscar stuff, but then like the perception of horror as well. And then the other joke I really liked is with the brother character, and him like sort of being like clueless to the idea that racism like exists still. Like one of the first jokes with him is like he gets into his like school like sports team, and he's like, yeah, like they just kind of put me on the team. And then the sister brings up, you know, because she's woke, she's like, well, you know, they only put you on the team because you're black, right? And he's like, really? We got to get past this idea that racism exists. You know what I mean? Like maybe they just think I'm a good player. And then, you know, the mom confirms it. She's like, no, you're not that good. But then later on, with him still thinking racism doesn't exist, whenever Ghostface is finally about to kill him, Ghostface starts off with a whip, which the character sort of brings up. He's like, oh, what is this, like 12 years a slave sort of thing? And then, you know, like Ghostface is like, oh, okay, my bad. And then the next thing he brings out like is a noose. And then again, it elevates. And then the last thing he does is like bring out a gun, and he's about to shoot him. And then and then the thing the brother character says is like, he's like, and another brother dies to gun violence. I guess racism still does exist, and like that's like his whole like arc and like revelation. So pretty funny, I thought. But yeah, so that's all it is about Scary Movie. Me personally, I liked it. Potentialities for rewatch, like I'm not even tripping, honestly. And if they do decide to do more as it goes on, fuck it, I'll probably watch. Obsession, another big one. Lots to talk about in this specifically. Again, I think the main thing I told my friend whenever me and him were finally able to have our one-on-one discussion about it, because I watched it with a few friends and we sort of talked about it like together for a bit, but then I went off with this other friend and me and him talked about it for like a pretty long period of time, and it wasn't even about the movie. It was more so about the kind of like idea of men in relationships, and how it sort of affects women. Uh, which again makes me sound kind of weird because I'm gonna be like speaking on behalf of women despite being a man, so it sort of breaks down the point. But I feel like it's necessary to talk about. Um, Again, like intentional. I mean, it has to be intentional. It's too apparent not to be intentional. I feel like the director of this movie was like really sort of like putting a again just like putting a mirror, putting a lens on a certain type of man, a certain type of very insecure, lonely man. And I mean, like, there's nothing bad about being lonely necessarily, but the way you put yourself onto other people and the way it can hurt other people, I think is the sort of main thing about this movie. And whenever I say that this movie is like a real mirror to some men specifically, and the thing I was trying to tell my friend is that you hear a lot about men right now and them complaining about dating and stuff, or like them complaining about like attention. They feel like they sort of like you know, like they'll downplay it. They won't say that they deserve it, but they want this attention from women. And how that inherently is sort of selfish. And again, not that it makes you a bad person to want attention and to want love, but the ways you go about it end up making you come across, one, very obsessive, possessive, selfish, and it really highlights these sort of insecurities you have about being alone, about being who you are, and also about the way you view other people. You know, if we're still talking about men, the way men view women specifically, and how kind of scary that can be, especially like in a modern sense, right? Uh, yeah, but real quick, just talking about the movie, amazing performances, obviously. I love like all of the lighting, all of the music is amazing. And again, in regards to performances, I mean, like this being that actress's like breakout role, crazy. She does such an amazing job. Um, Again, in just like the way she moves, like in a sort of like horror sense. Um, but then like in combination with the lighting, like the way she'll sort of like slink around like in darkness and just sort of exist there, very creepy. Um, and then also like her vocal performances. I mean, like the way she screams is like so visceral. I think every single time she did, I would get just chills. But the movie isn't about that, right? Necessarily, the movie is about Bear and his obsession towards Nikki, and the fact that he doesn't really love her. He's in love with this idea of her, and again, that makes him very possessive over her, which is selfish, and that's not love, right? And I mean that's highlighted by some earlier scenes. This idea that Bear is well obviously very apparently like in love with Nikki, but just sort of liking her like at a very basic level. Like he doesn't really know her to like extents, but he's very attracted to her for reasons. And I think one of the main reasons, honestly, is just because Nikki is a lot more interesting than he is. I mean, it's as simple as that. To me at least, just because like Bear is so boring. Like he's a very boring guy, but he feels like he's owed love in some type of way, which again also plays into the thing that he says, which is now sort of like famous like in online spaces. The sort of like, oh, like what's so wrong with being with me? And I mean, like the thing that I always thought about in regards to that is the sort of like whenever you say, oh, is it too much to ask for XYZ, and if you have to stop and say that, then yeah, like it is too much to ask for, you know what I mean? And that's basically where like Bear is at. Like he's so insecure about like emoting and showing any part of himself because he wants to come across as cool or whatever to Nikki because he likes her a lot, right? I feel like I'm gonna tiptoe a lot with my wording because there's something I want to say, or things I want to say, but I want to make sure they're correct. So I'm probably gonna pause a lot. Um, but backtracking. Yeah, but this idea that Bear just isn't really interesting, and maybe to some extent he's a bit insecure about that. But he feels like he wants love and he wants it from her because she is so interesting, right? And she's such an individual. And I mean, it's weird. Like we barely get any time with like real Nikki throughout this. But from what we're told about her, she has a very rich life. You know, she feels oddly isolated in some way, even with her friend group, and she feels this want to like leave and go be her own as an individual. And I mean, like the main thing with her and the thing we learn about is like she's a writer, and you know, and that's like obviously like just like an interesting element to people, right? The fact that they can write and emote their feelings through writing. Uh, and then you know this idea that early on like they're sort of talking about like what Nikki wants to do, and I mean like yeah, like Bear just like sort of sits there and like agrees with like everything she says. It's you know like he's just like really trying so hard for her attention and for her gratification, again without also revealing anything about himself, right? It's a very one-sided sort of relationship where he wants everything from her but he's not willing to give anything, right? Which I guess is like tied into the insecurity thing, because in reality he doesn't have much to offer, and maybe in the back of his head he knows he doesn't have much to offer. Of course that never gets revealed because he doesn't want to take any accountability for it, right? He wants to keep living in this fantasy, which okay, so bringing in like one of the main internet things and like something that people are saying, people are trying to sort of like paint Bear in an image, or like in a specific image, but again it's because I think a lot of men relate to him, and a lot of men don't want to admit that they sort of have like bad tendencies, or you know, very selfish tendencies, but I think that's a very human thing, right? Human people, us as individuals, kind of selfish, but we don't like to admit it because it makes us look like assholes, right? But with men specifically, and this is me projecting a little bit, we do want things, and you know we sort of want attention and we want love, right? um so I can see why a lot of people are gravitating to that aspect, because I feel like people are saying very simplistically, oh, like he only made the wish because he wanted to be loved. I mean, maybe, but that doesn't excuse the way he acted after the wish came true, right? Because initially, yes, maybe you can play it off like, oh, but he didn't know it was gonna work. But whenever these very obvious sort of like things start showing up, and it becomes very apparent that the wish did work, and Nikki is now madly in love with him, he never does anything to change it. If anything, he goes out of his way to try and like fix the current situation just so he can keep Nikki, again because he's so obsessed with the idea of being with her, right? He doesn't really care about her, he cares about the idea of her, which again it isn't love. It's you know it's something more perverted and selfish. um which is why, you know, because then people are saying, oh, Bear's not a villain for wanting to be loved. Bear's not a villain for this, that, the other. But I think he very slowly does become a villain, and it becomes very hard to sympathize with him when, again, a lot of these sort of like solutions become apparent, and there's a lot of opportunities for him to take accountability for his actions, and he never does. You know what I mean? I can't sympathize with a character like that, really. And I would sure hate to empathize with a character like that, because it'd be very revealing about me. Though I guess me not being able to really sympathize or empathize with him, and me being especially disgusted and horrified by his actions, I mean, I don't know, kind of says something at least. But again, I feel like that was like a large commentary online, just like men trying to validate the stuff he was doing for the sake of love. But I mean, again, it's not love. It's something incredibly perverse and selfish, which obviously isn't love. But again, like whenever I say like chances to take accountability, even before he makes the wish, he's given an opportunity to take accountability. Like whenever Nikki just straight up asks him, he's like, well, you know, like do you like me? And that's finally his chance to admit something and to, you know, be real about something, and he doesn't take it, right? And that's completely on him, because again, he has this insecurity and he doesn't want to be rejected, right? which again is why he makes the wish, I feel like, because at least in the back of his head, it doesn't cost him anything, right? If she's in love with him, he doesn't have to necessarily give her anything, right? um and then again, like opportunities, just like as it goes along, like any single time like Nikki has like a moment where she like regains this autonomy, and she's very conscious about what's happening and she's weirded out about the situation, Bear doesn't do anything to stop it, right? Like I think one of the first ones is like whenever they're like making out, and what's the song? Televisions by that one group is playing. The song is definitely called Televisions. Uh, but anyways, yeah. So like whenever they're making out to that scene, or to that song in that scene, that's like one of the moments where like Nikki like regains like consciousness, and she's incredibly freaked out about what she's doing. And again, like Bear acts like he's scared, which I mean, like, yeah, it's like startling initially, but like he knows what's going on now, like to some extent. Like you'd have to be like real clueless, real naive, and real dismissive about the other person to not think about what's going on with them and to not acknowledge it in any type of way, which is what Bear does consistently. Like he never acknowledges like anything that's going on with Nikki, even if it's no longer like the real Nikki. He doesn't care about her, like at any period, really. uh so that's a moment, but then obviously like the big moment, whenever like Nikki regains consciousness, whenever, he's like getting up and trying to leave, and she just asks him to kill him again, just or asks him to kill her. But like a moment where he can finally do something selfless, and do something in service of her, he doesn't do it again because he wants her for himself. Selfish, right? Other moments that really exemplify this, I mean, just like every single time like he's like given the solution about how to like unbreak the wish, and he just doesn't take it. The two main examples, because obviously like the main way to break the wish is like for him to, just like play it out essentially, or until he dies. So the solution that he's given to twice, the first time in the car whenever he calls the place and the person like is explaining like the sort of like small lore implications to him, but the guy was like, yeah, but you could also just try killing yourself. But whenever like he mentions like the killing yourself thing, like that's when it starts to fade out. So literally it's like, well, I mean, yeah, like, have you tried killing yourself? Like in Bear's head, he's completely toning it out because he realizes that's the solution now. But again, because he is so selfish and self-absorbed and obsessed with this idea of being with Nikki, he doesn't want to do something that's going to require him to sacrifice anything. So selfish again is the recurring thing. Uh, and again, like selfishness and possession has no real place in love. Which is why, again, as the movie goes on, Bear to me becomes a bit more villainous, and not villainous like in a traditional sense, but villainous in a very realistic sense that makes it scary. The fact that this person can exist, like within a relationship, within a toxic relationship specifically, right? Um, and then again, like towards the very end, like whenever he goes into the place after, or goes into the store and he's like trying to get like another like One Wish Willow, and the cashier tells him the same thing. Like the cashier is like, yeah, well, have you tried killing yourself? And again, it drowns out because like Bear is like just thinking, and he's like tuning out the like possibility for help and possible solutions. But same thing there, right? But the thing that I really liked about that moment, and it's just like a really good like cinematography moment, is like he finally sees himself in the mirror. Like he sees kind of how far this has gone, and that's the moment he can take accountability and fix it all. But he doesn't, and that's what makes him a villain in my eyes, or at least like a very bad person, right? Again, but it just has to do with men being insecure, to some degrees, and just not wanting to take accountability for the fucked up shit they do. And I feel like this movie was in big part talking about that and the sort of horror behind like a lethal amount of selfishness. It's scary, and it's scary to be trapped in that for some people. I mean, scary whenever I assume I'm being overly selfish in ways. So it's relatable to that extent, and I don't really want to be that person, but parts of that exist, right? Um, but I mean, still, and then just like talking about theory stuff, some of the things people are talking about, I can kind of see, like with the cat especially. The cat was the main thing, but like one of the theories is like the cat is the thing that possessed Nikki, which I mean, kind of stupid. I don't agree with that, but I feel like the cat is a very good metaphor for the situation that they're a part of. I mean, initially, the cat dies essentially from neglect from Bear, right? The cat ends up getting to the pills, which makes Bear a very bad, like absent-minded sort of owner, or sticking with the metaphor, kind of partner in this relationship. The sort of just like guy and his pet, which I mean essentially is what he wanted. But again, like in talking about like the dynamics within relationships, insecure men wanting to have this like position of power over women. So maybe there's a sort of parallel there with the cat, or at least what I'm getting at. And I mean, sorry if it sounds like kind of like ornery or whatever, but anyways. But then I mean that's pretty much what he does with Nikki. He's like, you know what, Nikki, you're basically like a pet now. Don't leave. Don't just like stay here until I get back. You know what I mean? He's treating her like a pet essentially. And I mean, again, like in relationship stuff, like it should be equal, right? And you should be willing to do things for each other and love each other very purely. But that's not what's happening here. It's a very toxic relationship in Bear's, but more like perpetrated by Bear. The fact that Bear is like really trying to keep her to himself in like any way that he can, but like still trying to have his own life like outside of her. You know what I mean? Very very bizarre shit. And obviously like the main example of that is like with the whole party thing, like him saying that he's gonna go out to this party, but she has to stay there. You know what I mean? Like super fucked up. But yeah, just like small things here and there. I don't know. I feel like I kind of get the gist of it. But yeah, like the whole cat thing and the cat metaphors. I mean, like they say that thing. It's like you can tell a guy's opinion on women based on how he like views cats and stuff like that. I've heard the same thing said about tofu, oddly enough. But anyways, that. But then again, talking about Bear. And again, with him also being just like a very cowardly and insecure person, I mean, like the way he decides to kill himself too, parallel with the cat. The cat kills itself with the pills. Bear kills himself with the pills, or tries to kill himself. Or no, I guess he does kill himself with the pills. But the more sort of like manly, stereotypically manly like option would be to shoot himself, which he almost does. But again, he's too much of a coward to do it, so he backs out of it and instead opts for the pills, which apparently statistically is very true. A lot of men who commit suicide shoot themselves. A lot of women who commit suicide usually overdose. So he ends up taking a very like perceived womanly way out, which says a lot about his character. But and then yeah, like the whole like last bit, incredibly haunting. But great movie. I'm again like this is one like when I was watching it in theaters where I was just like so absorbed into it, and I'm scared it won't be the same way if I were to rewatch it at home. But I'll leave that for another time. But anyways, again, just good movie, right? Next movie, Dragonheart, like 90s, I believe, like early 90s, somewhere around there. But pretty good, little adventure, sort of like knights running around. The kind of shit I like, this like sort of like dark fantasy aesthetic. But I mean, the main thing that I really liked was just the whole thing. I mean, like I like samurai stuff. I like cowboy stuff. I like I feel like there's one more. Well, I guess knight stuff, right? No, there's definitely one more somewhere. Cowboy, samurai, knights, whatever. But anyways, this like these like concepts about honor. In like an age like long gone sort of thing, right? Obviously with this it being knights, the main character, Dennis Quaid, is a knight of old, basically, and he's like apprenticing, or like, you know, he's or has like the prince as his apprentice, and he's trying to push on these ideas of morality, nobility, and honor of the knights onto this prince. But very obvious to us, not obvious to him yet, is how corrupted the prince is, and how the prince has a very evil sort of like feeling in his gut, essentially, right? The prince doesn't care about these things, and you know, like that comes out later. Like the prince never cared about honor and things like that. The prince just cared about the fighting, and he just wanted to be a good fighter. And you know, Dennis Quaid's character was just a means to that end. But I think initially, like, Dennis Quaid is like very protective over the prince. You know, he sees the prince as a son, but then also, again, just the sort of continuation of himself, his legacy, right? If I train this person in the same ways I was trained, I can sort of live eternally through him, right? But again, like that's just sort of like an old school way of thinking, right? Like the only reason why you like have kids, or like why you train people is you know, so like the craft stays alive. But again, so somewhere deep down, Dennis Quaid's character has a very noble heart. But then when he finally sees the prince's true colors, that makes him very jaded on the whole thing. The fact that everything that he was doing up until then was like a lie, pretty much, right? So it breaks him down, and he becomes this recluse, and he becomes like a vagabond mercenary. And then the way this ties in with the dragons is initially the prince gets into an accident, and he needs like a heart transplant. So they take him to the dragons because they're familiar with you know, dragons in that time. And although skeptical at first, Dennis Quaid is of the dragon ends up helping, and Dennis Quaid sort of like pledges an allegiance to the dragon. But then whenever he realizes the prince is corrupt, he misplaces his anger onto the dragons, because again, he's so absorbed in this idea that the prince was good, and you know, like him getting this heart transplant is what changed him, when in reality to us, so it's sort of like a dramatic irony for Dennis Quaid's character, if that's the correct way to use dramatic irony. I don't know. But you know, so unknown to him, known to us, the prince was bad all along, right? So sort of captivating, very simple, but captivating to me. And then the way these like themes of honor sort of play into it. And I mean, again, with this being like a classical knight thing, and like me bringing up samurai stuff and cowboy stuff, like there literally is like a moment in this whenever like Dennis Quaid finally realizes, you know what, the dragons were good all along. I misplaced my anger, and I forged this bond with the dragon. And I now realize the prince is evil. I have to go stop the prince to sort of reclaim my honor and to do what was right to begin with, you know? A sort of like retribution, if that's the correct word. But anyways, in that process, he ends up training like a small village how to fight, so they can fight against the king, or you know, like prince, now king. Which again, very reminiscent to like Seven Samurai and certain cowboy stuff, or even then like with the Mandalorian. Like there's literally like a episode in the Mandalorian where he does the same thing. He trains a group of villagers to like fight against the Empire. But you know, that's also just like nods to like westerns and to classic samurai stuff. But anyways, Dragonheart, very good. I watched it with my brother, and we had a pretty good conversation regarding some of the stuff in it. And there are stuff in it that's like very, and there is stuff in it that's very, not like especially deep, but you know, that I just found particularly interesting. Again, like themes of honor, but then also just like smaller, nicer moments. In regards to maybe friendship, regards to like a kind of forgiveness. For things you've done wrong, and trying to make things right, sort of thing. But very good movie, I thought. And again, like if you want to nitpick anything, you can say, oh, like the CGI is bad. But I kind of like it. It adds like a lot of character to it. I thought it would have been really cool if they really like dug deep on certain things and like had the dragon be like a practical like giant puppet. Just bring in Jim Henson and have him make a dragon puppet. That would fucking rock. especially because there's moments too, especially when you have close-ups where like I think they have like a practical, or like bits and pieces of a practical. It makes it feel a bit more real. But they opt for like early CG, and it doesn't look that bad if I'm being completely honest. Like there's times where it's like, oh yeah, it's obviously CG, whatever. But it's an older movie, and I feel like in the ways they use it, they sort of use it more for comedy, which I kind of liked because again, it's like balancing stuff, right? You have this more like sort of adult tale of knights and whatnot, and then you just have like silly dragon shit, and then also like silly like adventure stuff. So I feel like if I watched this movie when I was a kid, I probably would have like really really liked it. But I mean, even watching it now, I really enjoyed it. So shout out to Dragonheart. Next movie, Rental Family. Really enjoyed it. This is one of those kind of like slice of life movies that always just grabs me for some reason. Mainly with themes regarding loneliness and regarding want for connection, and just sort of talking about humanity in a very general way. I mean, the premise for this movie, it's about a struggling actor, Brendan Fraser's character, a struggling actor living in a foreign country and just being entirely alone in that. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't really have any friends. He doesn't really have much of like a life, really, just because he committed himself so much into acting in a foreign country. So he's very isolated and alone. And after being like rejected for so long, because I think at this point in the movie he's been living in Japan for like six or so years, maybe more, maybe less, or maybe more, slightly less, somewhere around there, somewhere around 6 years, and he hasn't really had like a break in any type of way. And then like it starts off with him going on this audition, and he's not entirely sure he got it, so he's feeling very down about himself. And then he finally gets a call to do a job, and the job is for this company that basically has actors like a part of their employee base, and they basically just have them go and act as members of society. Like what I mean. Or just like members in like a family unit, or maybe like you're just like hired on to like be a friend to somebody for a little bit. So there's sort of like this montage sequence of Brendan Fraser getting absorbed in the lives of these different people, and I mean like all of those things like begin to like intertwine, and or not really intertwine, but like for Brendan Fraser, they start to become very very real, and he starts to feel very connected to these people despite his personality in their lives not necessarily being real. So I guess layered in that way, the fact that he's an actor pretending to be a real person, in a sense, despite him being a real person. So I mean, in reality, he ends up just bringing a lot of himself into these characters that he's playing for these people, which is why it feels real to himself, but more importantly, it feels real to them. The connection they begin to forge begins to feel real, and that really gets into Brendan Fraser's head after a while. And he starts to feel bad in a lot of ways. The fact that he feels like he's lying to these people, and the connection that they're forming with one another isn't entirely real or realistic, and they're sort of robbed in some ways too, of like an actual human connection, which is what all of them wanted to begin with, right? So again, layered, but I love that aspect of it. And I mean, like the people that he interacts with, he's interacting with. Initially, like his first job, I liked it a lot, but he's supposed to be playing the husband of a girl who's meant to be getting married for like the sake of her family. Like her family really wants to see that she gets married, but it turns out she's a lesbian, and what she really wants is to get married to her lover. And again, just like a very like human thing, right? Like having to like sort of lie to the people you love so you can end up being who you really want to be, or being with who you really want to be and doing the things you want to do, and it makes you feel kind of disconnected and sad. And Brendan Fraser's character initially is very scared to take on the task because he sort of realizes how real this is to this person, and he almost doesn't want to. Or I guess he just feels the pressure on all of this, right? And the pressure on him to perform in such a way. But then I think afterwards, whenever like all of it goes through, and I mean with like some like dinks here and there, But once it all like goes through, and these two lovers are reunited, and Brendan Fraser sort of sees how he was able to like play a small part and help this person, just like live their truth. He ends up feeling really good about this whole thing, and he takes on this job about being like a rental family member. And then like the next main job that he gets is pretending to be a father for this young girl. So in reality, he can help the mother get the daughter into like a really good school. um, but again, this movie also has really subtle kind of like commentary on like Japanese culture, the way Japanese people view loneliness, the way they view relationships, the way they view dynamics within relationships. Very, very sort of like intense and very realistic stuff. Uh, but aside from that, yeah, he gets hired on to pretend to be this father, and one of the things that he has a line that he says to his boss, where he's like, like I don't think I can be a very good father because I never had a dad. It's revealed that his father left him when he was younger, or not left. Well, actually, yeah. So his father left him, but then with him going on to be an actor in Japan, there was a moment where he could have gone to the funeral for his father, again, a man that he never really knew, but he chose not to in pursuit of his own life, right? And the sort of effects that has on him. But then the sort of irony of the situation is he goes on to be a father to this daughter, and a very good father at that. But then like the sort of sadness that comes from it, they're forming this very real and almost pure connection, because both of them feel how real it is. Obviously the daughter believes this man is her father, and Brendan Fraser, just being a sort of like kind-hearted person, really does give his all into being kind to this girl. And this girl also, along with everybody else in the movie, has a sort of loneliness to her. I mean, her not having a father, her mother being a very busy woman, and her being a single child, she's very isolated in this way. So whenever she finally has this person in her life who's giving her this attention, she becomes very attached to him, in a way that Brendan Fraser initially probably never assumed, and in a way that the mother definitely didn't assume. Which is why it makes it all the more sad whenever it gets revealed to the daughter that all of this wasn't real, right? And that's sort of a big plot point in the movie. But then also another plot point is, Brendan Fraser gets hired to be a reporter, and he's interviewing this sort of once famous actor in Japan, one who's like slowly losing his mind to dementia. But he begins to form a real connection with this man as well. And they talk about acting, they talk about life, they talk about what it means to be somebody in somebody else's life, and how like you should do your best to be there. But again, it ties in, like, this man being like a famous actor, he was never there for his daughter. And then now that he's old, he realizes that he's messed up in some type of way, and he can't get that time back, and he's very regretful and sorrowful about it. But now the daughter is older, she's living her own life, and she can't make time for him. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the great like tragedy. And it's a great tragedy in all of our lives, whenever we get so self-absorbed in the kind of things we're doing, and we don't make time for other people. And I feel like this movie had a lot to say about that, which is probably why it resonated so much with me in a lot of ways. But also just very like beautifully shot movie. Obviously, like, Japan's a pretty nice location. There's a lot of stuff to just look at realistically. The music is very nice. Just like the more like kind of subdued sort of acting, like there's no moment where anybody especially like bursts out. You know what I mean? But then again, like, talking about these ideas of loneliness. Obviously, the older actor is very lonely. Brendan Fraser was very lonely initially, but kind of finds a family within this company that he's working for. Definitely as it goes along. But then like forming connections with all these people that he's working for, essentially. But it's real to them, and then in turn becomes very real to him. And there's sort of this like bit of like commentary that comes up every now and then from one of the other coworkers, but she says, you know, like what's so wrong with like living a lie, right? Uh, which I mean is a very like double-edged sort of statement, right? I mean the things about lies are you know, one, they're not real, right? But there can be comfort in a lie from time to time, and that's something you realize whenever you become like an adult. I feel like a lot of adults lie to themselves, and you know, lie to others, and especially will lie to children, if they think it's a way to like comfort somebody in some way. But you know, the harsh reality of it is it isn't real. Uh, so then maybe it's best just to live your truth and live in reality. I mean, obviously that's sort of like the better way to live, but you know, being and living is a very complicated thing. So sometimes you got to compromise, but you know, if the compromise costs you, then what point was it, right? But you know, like she's also a very lonely character too. And again, with like the sort of like Japanese culture and the commentary around that, she's never really hired on to be a family member. She's always hired on to be part of this like apology service. And I mean, in Japan, they have a pretty big like cheating culture, and a very like sort of misogynistic culture. So in this, like she gets hired on to like basically like play women who are apologizing to other women for the mistakes of the men. So like if a man cheats and he gets caught up, they'll hire her to basically play the mistress, or you know, play the person that they were cheating on, so that she can apologize to like the wife on their behalf. You know what I mean? So it it basically takes all the blame away from the man in the situation. And again, how sort of hurtful that is to her as like an individual, right? And it weighs on her, but like, you know, she tries to cope and say, well, you know, this is the lie she's telling herself. It's like, well, you know, it's sort of helping them out in the long run, and you know, it's not real. Like it's not real to me, and I shouldn't take it personally, and it's all a job at the end of the day. But I mean, if the job is sort of hurting your soul, then you know, what's the point of it? But yeah, very good movie. I enjoyed it immensely. There's a minor twist in the movie, in regards to the boss character, that was so out of nowhere for me, and it hit me, and that's why I think this movie really spoke to me, at least like on the loneliness aspect and sort of like a want for connection. There's two shots, one at the beginning of the movie, and then one kind of at the halfway point towards the end of the movie, where Brendan Fraser, again very alone, sitting in his like little apartment, and he's looking out his window, and he's looking out onto all these other people living their lives. You know, he sees a young couple, just sort of like partying and like enjoying themselves, you know, enjoying their company, just the two of them. He sees an old man doing very much the same thing, just sort of looking out onto the world. Somebody else who is very alone, but feels maybe a kind of connection in just viewing the world as it is. And then he sees another young couple who are expecting a child. And again, people who are connected, but then also disconnected. Very, very sort of pure in its messaging, I thought. But I enjoyed this movie immensely. Last movie, She's the Man. Probably not gonna say much on this. Very funny. Channing Tatum, very funny in it, obviously. Amanda Bynes, very funny in it as well. The sort of like ideas of men, and then sort of like turning it on his head in like small ways, because obviously with her, she's going in pretending to be a man so she can, you know, play soccer, which again, commentary on the culture, the fact that women aren't viewed in the same light as men and can't compete alongside as men, and she's going in to prove them wrong about that, right? So very progressive messaging. But you know, but she goes in trying to be the stereotypical man, like try to come off as like tough and macho and stuff like that, you know, with the way she carries herself, the way she's talking. But then at the end of the day, she's a woman, and she's talking about these very womanly things as a man. But then that makes her very attractive to like the sort of women that she's going to the school with, funny enough. But then also it sort of like weirds out the guys, but then the guys are also sort of seeing this point of view that she's bringing up to them. And I feel like they only really take it to heart because it's another guy saying it to them, or you know, so they think, right? But then obviously the sort of like flip on its head sort of thing, because Channing Tatum's character initially seems like the cool guy, like macho, like he's very muscular, kind of tough and cool looking, but he is incredibly shy and sensitive, and he wants to connect with with I guess like the specific like it girl at their school, right? But then Amanda Bynes' character sort of finds that attractive as well, because initially she has this perception of him and kind of has this perception of men, but when seeing that he's this sort of like shy, sensitive guy, she becomes very attracted to him. Which again is in opposition to her boyfriend at the start of the movie, who is this sort of stereotypical like macho guy, like trying to be cool for the guys sort of thing, right? But yeah, but then also just the sort of kind of what's it called, gender like role reversal thing, very Mrs. Doubtfire kind of thing. And there is a very Mrs. Doubtfire-esque sort of montage sequence at the very beginning, whenever she's trying on like all these different outfits, and then of course you have the very cliched two places at the same time sort of thing. Like they go to the carnival and she has to be herself and she has to be the brother that she's pretending to be. And how those things sort of like intertwine, and how all of this like sort of catches up to her by the very end of it, and she has to come clean about it all. Very good movie, very funny. David Cross is also in it, and he's very funny as well. But yeah, again, just good. Honestly, like one of those movies that's fun to watch with people, because people will get really into it, just because it's quite a simple movie when you think about it, but just intensely enjoyable. But yeah, so that's it for movies. TV, main thing is the Boondocks. Something I really wanted to talk about this mainly is like I finished season 3 and I'm kind of scared going into season 4. I remember with like Adult Swim and them stopping the Boondocks for a while, but then whenever they finally brought it back, I was so excited, because I would just watch the reruns of seasons 1, 2, and 3, and I really enjoyed it. So whenever they started this advertising campaign for the 4th season, I thought it was like the coolest shit ever. I mean, like I remember that Adult Swim bump with Huey like walking through with like these changing backgrounds. It's like the sort of I guess like projects behind them, and then it's like these like samurai swords coming down, ninja stars or whatever, and then these like voices like shouting at him, and it's just him walking very calmly through it all. I thought that was the coolest shit whenever I first saw it. So simple and captivating, and really speaks a lot about what the show is about, and sort of like what the show like evolved into. Because I mean, me watching from seasons like 1, 2, and 3, there is a very clear evolution in how the show portrays itself. I think initially, just because like I was also watching behind the scenes stuff too, but Aaron McGruder, he talks a lot about Charlie Brown, and how that's kind of like an inspiration for him. And the first season especially does seem very Charlie Brown-ish, like down to the music, the sort of like light jazz sort of stuff, like the way it transitions, but also like the sort of simplicity with the characters. Like everything is so like downplayed and calm. There's moments of like intense humor, yes, but for the most part, a lot of the messaging around it is quite simple. Simple, clear, and specific. And there's moments that are a bit louder and stuff like that, like actiony moments, but they're sort of few and far between, because like a lot of it is just sort of talking like between characters, and like relaying these ideas about what it means to be like a black man in this sort of white community, like what it means for Huey, Riley, Granddad, Uncle Ruckus, Tom, and then even for Jasmine to some extent. I feel like Jasmine had a really big role in parts of season 1, and then she becomes kind of one note as the show goes on, unfortunately. But yeah, so those earlier seasons, man, there's like a certain magic to it, like seasons 1 and then seasons 2. But then like as it goes on, it definitely starts to lean into the more like surreal sort of aspects, or like more hyperbolic aspects, which are still very funny, and there still are these sort of like intense themes about the culture in there, but like I don't know, I feel like at times it kind of focuses a bit more like on action stuff, which I mean is fine, but like as the animation got better, like, oh yeah, we can just do like crazy shit now, so they just start doing crazy shit, which again, like it's all a bit of a balancing act. And for me, I still think they do a really good job at it, but it does become a little bit more like outrageously hilarious as the show goes on, as opposed to the more like subdued humor of previous seasons. But one of my favorite one of my favorite episodes that I watched recently was the sort of like Scared Straight parody episode, where they go to the prison with like a group of white kids, and obviously like Uncle Ruckus is a bit more protective of the white kids, and Tom is still having his dilemma about being anally raped in prison. But that episode really starts talking about the what's the term, the prison industrial complex. I believe is the term. Yeah, prison industrial complex. But it's the idea that, you know, like people are incarcerated and put into jail, or, you know, black men, minority men specifically, are put into jail, but they're put into jail essentially as like slave labor, right? Like that's basically what it comes into. Because like obviously whenever you're in jail, there's like parts of it where like you gotta like do jobs and shit like that, or like in prison, like you have to do jobs essentially, and you do get paid, but like you're not getting paid shit. I mean, think about whenever other people were working, they get paid shit, right? It's very obvious. But the fact that it is a large minority percentage of people are the ones being arrested and being put away for very long periods of time for crimes that probably don't necessitate that sort of severity in punishment says a lot, right? But then again, it's just the fact that they're put into prison, and like now, like they're just not allowed to live lives. You know what I mean? The whole like sort of like joke about that by the very end of it, well, you know, it becomes a very serious moment, but then it becomes a joke. Is whenever one of the prisoners is like sitting down, he's talking to Huey, and he's like, man, I had my whole life like ahead of me. Like I could have been the president of the United States. You know, like I could have actually done something with my life, but instead I'm just gonna be in prison, raping people in the asses, basically, is what he says. So it turns into a joke, but it's very like the only reason why it becomes so hyperbolic is because it's really exaggerating this idea that these people should have been able to just be people, and they were sort of robbed that in some ways, so that now they're just going to do what they're doing. You know what I mean? This idea of like institutionalization, which is something that Kendrick Lamar talked about in To Pimp a Butterfly, obviously. Institutionalized, but you get so caught up in living in a certain way that whenever you finally get out, it's like unrecognizable to you, and you do find a comfort in just being back where you were, which is why obviously, you know, you have this whole thing about like repeat offenders and stuff like that. You know, like they realize like their lives are completely gone, and you know, like they're not gonna have families, they're not gonna like live normal lives anymore, because one, people will always view them as criminals, and two, I mean, like they just don't understand the way the real world works now anymore after being in prison for so long, and all they really know how to do is just be in prison, so they stay in prison. Some of them, and then, you know, some of them that do go on to like live outside are just like so disconnected from everything. But interesting stuff, an interesting episode, while also mixing in some humor here and there. The other show, New Girl, I've been watching a lot of New Girl. Jake Johnson, Zooey Deschanel, and cast of characters. Obviously, Jake Johnson is Nick, Zooey Deschanel is Jess, and then you have Schmidt, their Jewish friend, who's sort of like an asshole, like Wall Street sort of dude with like a heart of gold by the end of it. Winston, their black friend, who's honestly just a good friend, honestly, just a good guy. And then Cece, Jess's friend, who is who's a model, and sort of has like a relationship with Schmidt. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now, this like whole like love triangle with them, and like them kind of like figuring out their place. But that's a large part of this show, I guess, like these like dynamics between men and women in their like mid-20s, like mid to late 20s, early 30s, sort of still just figuring out their lives, you know. So like young adults navigating their lives, figuring out what they want to do, who they want to be with, but then also just like a large theme surrounding friendship. I feel like the reason why this show is so entertaining, to me at least, because it is just like, or it just seems a lot of the times like a group of friends hanging out and getting into shenanigans. essentially. And I mean, every single episode has been so humorous. Every single episode, just like talking about like their relationship towards one another and how they feel about each other. Um, but then like, you know, with Nick sort of being this like very disconnected, slightly because of his upbringing, but then also like he just has no direction in his life, and like, he feels very lost. And that makes it very difficult for him to connect with other people. But then again, he just has this group of people in his life that love him for him, even if he is like sort of fucked up, or you know, like sort of fucked up and is a fuck up. But you know, people still love him. And then, you know, Jess, being the only woman like living with three men, how she's, I mean, like almost kind of like this like mom character to them, but then also just like their friend, and you know, they go to each other for advice all the time, and you know, like they'll have like little jokes at each other and stuff like that. But then also her trying to figure out her life, like her being a teacher, and then, you know, her trying to like connect with men, and like obviously like she ends up like having a relationship with Nick. And then with Cece, it's very much the same thing. I mean, like she's a model, so it seems like she kind of has her life figured out, and she likes the life she's living, but then she realizes that she does want connection, and she wants to feel connected to people, and she sort of finds that in Schmidt. And I mean, like the whole arc that I was going through, I mean, like with her being Indian, she's so kind of desperate for this connection, and again with her being in her 30s, she's realizing that time is kind of running out for her to be with somebody, so she ends up getting in this like arranged marriage, but how that like hurts her in a lot of ways, as you know, it turns out it's not really what she wants. And honestly, Winston is sort of the one who seems to have it all together, but he's also just navigating his life as well, like in small ways. Again, like him being surrounded by like mainly white people, is sort of like a dynamic in the show. But then like him also just like really just loving his friends, you know. He just likes to be around and hang out, and he's like out doing his own thing, trying to score with the ladies and whatnot. Because the thing with him right now is he's kind of have like an off and on with Brenda Song, which I mean, in this show, man, there's like so many like celebrity cameos. Too much to get into, but I mean, some of the highlights, like Olivia Munn is in it. Taylor Swift was in a recent episode, funny enough. What's her name? The mom from Freaky Friday, isn't it? I'm blanking. And others. But yeah, just like a lot of celebrity cameos. But again, like the whole show, like on itself, just mainly talking about friendships, talking about dynamics within relationships, talking about like discovering who you are, and then also kind of just being who you are, in your like early, or you know, like mid to late 20s, early 30s. So I mean, like it sort of hits me specifically since I'm in that demographic. But yeah, then just like intensely funny, and then just has moments of like tenderness to it all. But honestly, like watching this show makes me really realize why people love TV so much, and maybe why I was so scared to get into TV, because I'm already sort of media obsessed as it is, and this is just like a whole nother like rabbit hole to obsess myself over and become addicted to. So kind of a slippery slope, but I'm already too far in it to really give up on it, so I'm probably just gonna keep watching. Like now I'm on season 3, but again, good show. But yeah, that's how it is for TV. Music, quick ones. Feline's Return by Natanya, very good R&B. She has a very lovely voice. No standouts in the song to me specifically, which is okay. Like I still enjoyed the album, but I probably would like to just explore other projects from her, because I think she has like a small handful. So I'll be into that, just because again, like I like her voice so much, and then of course like instrumentally that R&B sound I like a lot, because that also plays into another artist I was listening to this month, Erica de Cassier, with her album Essentials. Very like ED, or just like very like electronic in places, very dance-ish, very trance-ish, while also being like very spacious instrumentally. And she also has like a very R&B sort of style with her voice. Honestly, like listening to this stuff, it reminded me of like the R&B sound that I sort of grew up knowing from radio, like in the 2000s and early 2010s. Like I would remember like coming back from the pool, or like coming back from like Hawaiian Falls or some shit like that, So I'm already kind of like damp and tired because of like all the chlorine and shit. But then like turning on the radio like for the ride home and like hearing like R&B music always made me very tired. So whenever I was listening to these like albums, like they were sort of smoothing in a lot of ways and sort of like made me sleepy. Which I mean, like I don't know, kind of a good thing. It was just like a good feeling listening to these albums. But one of the standouts on Essentials from Erica was Puppy Love. But the instrumentals I like starting off were like very funny because like it's like this like do 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 do. So like it's like this like adventurous sort of tune. It reminded me of something like Legend of Zelda, like any sort of like forest themes. It's like Lost Woods themes kind of thing. But it sounds like sort of upbeat in some ways, but then it dives into a more like atmospheric, like electronic sort of vibe. Again, like very R&B based, but the lyric I like in it a lot is "You're so sweet, put your butterflies around me, and you can call it puppy love, 'cause you know real love is just as naive." I mean, I'm kind of butchering it, but I was trying to get y'all an idea of like the flow of it. But that song I love a lot. Again, called Puppy Love. But then that lyric I like a lot. Again, just talking about a very sort of kind of romantic idea revolving love, but also like in a very pure way. Because obviously, like romance is the idea of love, but with the sort of language in this, it seems a bit more pure than just romance. It seems like actual love, which again, like the butterflies sort of thing. You know, the butterflies in your stomach whenever you have feelings for somebody else, and then also, you know, just saying and you can call it puppy love because you know real love is just as naive. I mean, puppies being like very cute, but they're also sort of dumb, and naive. You know, but who's to say it's less real than real love, right? Again, so very good lyrics on that, and there's a couple other tracks that are very good, but that's just one that stuck out to me. A project that I was listening to a lot this month was called Personal Protocol by the artist 8485. Just again like dance, electronic, sometimes going into like slower, more like atmospheric kind of instrumentation, while also being like trance-like in the same vein, but then also having like very energetic, dancey and like electronic stuff as well. So you have like the whole sort of a cycle of sounds basically, but also very short project, 18 minutes. So give it a listen if you want. Again, it's Personal Protocol, 8485. I was only very, very familiar with her because she did a song with Danny Brown on the album Stardust. So I was just interested in like a lot of those artists to begin with. So, but this is one that I was just listening to. But my favorites, Breakers, which has a very good like lyrical chain in it. But I mean, basically what I got from it is like the song is about wanting change or like wanting things to be different or maybe better in some ways. Like the reoccurring lyric is the it'll be different this time. And then like towards the end, like the sort of chorus is I've been alone and it's bad for me. It's bad for me. I've been alone. I don't have to be. Which I guess like ties into one of my other favorite songs on the album, Same Tasks, which is again about feeling stuck in some ways and wanting change, but then also finding a sort of comfort in your routine, finding comfort in maybe like an isolation, which again isn't especially healthy, which I mean probably ties into themes of the Backrooms, right? But yeah, so I feel like these two songs kind of go hand in hand in some type of ways, wanting connection and wanting to feel accepted in some type of way, but being very scared about change while also very wanting it, you know what I mean? So like living with a very like contradictory heart and how sort of like sad that can be. And then my other favorite song, just like more like on like an upbeat level, is Scribbles. It sort of has like a very rock sound, but like the thing I like about it is like it feels like it's constantly like elevating, if that makes sense. Like it's always like building up to something, and it eventually does, and then it kind of like dies down again. So it's like a very like escalating, descending like roller coaster kind of track. But loved it a lot and love this whole project. Again, Personal Protocol, 8485, 18 minutes. I recommend it heavily. Next project is May God Bless Your Hustle by Mike, all caps. Rap hip hop with more alternative beats. My personal favorite from the album is Pigeon Feet. Again, just like the flow initially, like really really cool, but in the second half of the song, it sort of breaks down into just like pure instrumental, and the instrumental sounds like very like video game like chiptune-ish, not chiptune specifically, but like in that same vein. I was thinking about stuff from like N64 type of stuff. But then this album also in places has like a very like vaporwave-esque aesthetic, sort of like sweeping and like abstract, ambient sort of like vocalizations and instrumentation. But this instrumental specifically on Pigeon Feet, it's like very like upbeat, sort of like electronic. It's like do 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 do, and then it sort of like loops on itself. But it sounds very goofy, but it's sort of cool in a way. But then with this song, like I was only really clued onto it because I had heard one of the tracks from it called Hunger, and that is the most popular track. But the first track, Somebody Please, leads so perfectly into Hunger. You need both, I feel like, to really exemplify how good a track Hunger is. But I mean, again, like that's kind of just like the way I listen to music personally. Like I just love to listen to albums. I don't like listening to singles. Like obviously the singles are what get you into it, but listening to albums and listening to how songs connect to one another, I think is what really makes music so different from like a lot of other media. But again, like just like Project on the whole, very enjoyable. I mean, like this is like sort of like the rap that I've been interested in lately. You know, like I've been talking a lot about Billy Woods and Kenny Siegel, and then also like I was listening to a lot of like Killer Mike in June, specifically Michael. Just going back to that project because I like that project so much. But then also with like Dean Blunt, like on a more instrumental level, like relating to this album. But then also whenever he raps and stuff like that on his tracks. But the fact that like the flow is like very clear, and like very syllable and like word based, and like how they stress like syllables and words, it all just sounds cool to me. But next one, Ants from Up There, and Forever How Long by Black Country New Road. So two different albums. Ants from Up There is the first one I heard, and then Forever How Long is the second one I heard. But I think I prefer Forever How Long. But they're like a rock oriented band, like British rock band. But their instrumentation is like super kind of like orchestral in some ways. I put operatic, but I think I really meant orchestral and like very folkish with their sort of vocalizations. Well, although in Ants from Up There, it's like a male vocalist. So it sounds a bit more like rockish, maybe even like garage rock or like emo rock sort of stuff. But he has a very good voice. But the instrumentation is still sort of like incredibly layered. So many different types of instruments. So I think if you have a really good ear for that sort of thing, you can really pick them out. But like still obviously very very rock focused, drums, guitar, you know, your usuals. But there's like a lot of like varied kind of percussion here and there. There's a lot of varied like horns and whatnot here and there, which is always really interesting, and that goes for both projects, honestly. And again, like despite how sort of like different and varied like even like instrumentation can be in one song, or like how maybe like the vocalization will sort of contrast the instrumentation, it all always seems to flow together so well. And then especially with the second album, with it being a female vocalist this time around, it lends itself very well to it, and it almost sounds very folkish in some ways. My favorite track, I mean, if you just want an example of it, is Nancy Tries to Take the Night. Amazing track. Just like constantly like building towards something, and then like, you know, there's this climax, and then it dies down in a very natural way. But like every single song just sort of feels like that it's always building to something, gets to something, and then, you know, continues on, and it just like flows into each other, and it just keeps going, and it's such a nice experience, honestly. So again, Black Country New Road is the band, with their projects Ants from Up There and Forever How Long. Last thing I want to talk about, or one of the last things I want to talk about, is I Am Very Young and I Am Learning How to Live, by the artist Noremi. Pretty short project, 30 minutes. And I mean, just like very simply, it's just the thoughts of a 23-year-old. I saw this artist on TikTok, and it's sort of like that very bedroom pop sound, and I like giving these people a listen. I mean, like the sound is nothing too crazy, honestly. I mean, again, like you have like a lot of people making this type of music, uh, so it's not interesting to me on that level anymore. Like sonically, it's always going to be more interesting to me in terms of like a story and lyrics, and I feel like this kind of captured just like some of the things that I always think of. I mean, obviously me being 25, but like I was 24 once, so. But again, like these ideas about fitting in, or like maybe finding your place in, in the whole world, life after college sort of stuff, or like just like life after school, like finally being in like this like adult world and feeling a kind of isolation maybe about it. So you're so confused and kind of conflicted on just like all of this stuff, and I think this album like captures that feeling incredibly well. There's a reprise track in this with just piano, so I got to give that a shout out. But this artist was saying how like they're very inspired by like Emotion Heap, which is also a reason why I really got into them. But they don't really have like intensely electronic stuff in the same way like Emotion Heap has, like this sort of like very like atmospheric electronic stuff. But like Lately, which is the opener, is sort of like in that same vein. But then other tracks I liked were Lukewarm Beer, which again just really ties into that idea about like trying to fit in like socially, and like sort of drinking beer, or like getting into like drinking and like getting into this drinking culture as a way to socialize yourself. And then again, just like thinking about like your future, or like thinking about where things are fitting in with where you are now. It's just a track 23. But again, like decent project. Nothing especially stand out, since I mean, again, like this is stuff I was thinking, but again, like the reminders are nice. Last thing I want to talk about is Bjork. Gotta shout out Bjork. Or actually, real quick, one last thing I will say about Noremi, and with them, again, just being like a small artist, and like this being an album of about 30 minutes. I think it's like 8 or so tracks, 9 tracks. But just if you're sort of confused, but you feel like you have something to say, just put shit out there, talking to you specifically, the one person who I know will listen to this. Just put your shit out there, man. Come on. Don't be afraid. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people just putting stuff out there. Just go ahead and throw your shit out there, or not shit, but you know what I mean. Just go ahead and put your stuff out there. Because you never know who's going to resonate with it. And I mean, again, like I didn't resonate with this, or like I did resonate with this on a fairly base level, and it's unfortunate that it's nothing like especially stand out. But again, it's nice to know that you can relate to people, and it's nice to know that other people are kind of going through the same things you're going through, right? But I digress. Last thing I want to talk about is Bjork. Again, like I'm a big fan of Vespertine. So I was listening to a live rendition of Vespertine, and something funny that Bjork said was because she was talking about like doing the live for Vespertine, and talking about how different it was from all her other projects. All her other projects being a lot more dancey and like energetic. Yeah, but the thing she says is like, well, like kind of weird to most like people, but like she says like, yeah, and like I was just so used to like going on stage and having like multiple like orgasms. But I mean, like what she means by that is just like peaking, essentially, like emotionally, vocally, in like the very intense way that she's performing her songs, right? But then she was talking about Vespertine. She's like, yeah, like I was so used to just like orgasming, and I have like multiple orgasms like while I'm performing. But with Vespertine, it's just like slow song, and then another slow song, and then another slow song, and then maybe we take a break and then come back, and it's like another slow song, because that's what Vespertine is. Vespertine is a lot of slower songs, but there are some tracks that are a bit more energetic, like Heirloom. Specifically is what I'm thinking of. But on this live rendition that I heard, and with the arrangement of the tracks, because some of them are a bit out of order from how the album is, but with the arrangement, something that she does like add a few tracks from a Homogenic, but then also just like a few like singles, like she adds a track called Generous Palm Stroke, I think is what it's called. But I love that track a lot whenever I heard it, and this was the first time I heard it in this live rendition. But then she also adds Unravel from Homogenic. She adds All Is Full of Love. There's an overture at the very beginning, which sounds very nice because, I mean, again, she has like a sort of like orchestral like backing track with her now this time, since it's like a live performance, and her voice is still so good. She adds in like all these little like small vocalizations, you know, just because it's like a live performance. Her like little like Icelandic speaking, which is still very cool to hear. But yeah, was just a huge fan of listening to this live rendition, and you know, just like listening to her like talk more and stuff about her music and you know the way she like conducts herself. But yeah, that was it for this month. I mean, again, kind of a bummer. I lost the first one, but I think this is way better. 20-ish minutes longer, but way better, I think. So hopefully it all comes through. Hopefully, and hopefully if you watched it all the way through, you enjoyed. Just tell me some shit in the comments. Fuck it. Like, yeah, whatever you want to tell me. It doesn't even have to be related. Or you can just tell me I'm stupid and I'm wrong and I'm this, that, and the other. And, I mean, I'll probably laugh about it, but... Or even then, just like share some of the stuff that y'all are listening to this month. Anything that sort of captured your ear, captured your eyes, captured your heart, maybe. But yeah, because I mean, like I do get a few people on this. Like I know some of them are like family members and whatnot. But you know, I'm always just interested to hear what y'all have to say, or even if it's in person, you know, just like have a chat with me. But yeah, that's it. Take care.